So as always, stick around to the end of the episode and there will be a dorky joke. Now, today's question is, what is the credibility behind the statement of you should walk a mile in someone else's shoes before you judge them? So this is a really interesting question to me, because this idea kind of goes with the current flow of how we should be looking at people. The idea is that people are these unique microcosms of their own life and their own culture. And because of that, you've got this idea that we shouldn't really be judging them, because judgment has a negative connotation, and you really need to know who they are and where they come from in order to actually be able to judge them. Now, I've got sad news for you. Sad news is that you can't help but judge people. It's just impossible. You have to be doing it 100% of the time. Now, whether or not you're fully consciously aware of it or not, who knows? The unconscious mind controls most of who we are and what we do. I'll have some links down below that actually talk about this. I've got a good video that I watched a long time ago that's really amazing and a lot of fun to kind of watch. There's also a lot of just content in general, but the idea of it is this. Your brain does a lot of things for you, and a lot of it is where it prevents your mind, your consciousness, the thing you think of as you, from knowing stuff that it probably doesn't need to know, or that would not benefit it for survival. And the rest of the things, it makes up a lot, and it shares that with you. So just as some basic ideas. In your eye, you have an optic nerve that blocks some of your vision. So there's these little dots in your vision that you cannot see, and there's an online test that I'll link to where you can actually demonstrate that to yourself. And it's really cool when you do it, because your brain is doing this sort of real-time photoshopping of the world around you to fix this idea. In fact, there's only a small degree of your vision, about 1 to 3 degrees of vision, that are actually clear from your eyes. The rest of it's more peripheral vision, so very blurry. And yet your brain is taking in all the content around you, and your eyes are flicking back and forth, and what's going to happen is it's going to piece it all back together into what appears to be a clear environment for much greater than those small degrees of angle that you actually have as clear. It's doing this in real time. So your brain is very, very fast. It's a very, very, very fast computer, and it's capable of doing this. Now, it's doing this not for its own benefit, but for that conscious benefit. If we walked around in a world that was super blurry all the time, we'd have a problem, right? So our brain makes up the stuff from previous experiences. It kind of gets it from information when it's flicking around, and it sort of pieces it back together so that you see what's going on right now. We're able to make calls of emergency. So if your kid or someone you love is walking along with you and suddenly a car starts backing up out of a driveway, you will actually respond to that sooner than you could ever be consciously aware. And then your brain lets you take credit for it, your consciousness. You can then say, wow, I did a snap judgment, or I did a quick judgment, or I very quickly responded to this, or wow, I didn't even realize I was doing it until I was doing it. That's probably the most accurate one. You didn't realize you were doing it until you were doing it, because you actually didn't realize it till after you were doing it that it actually was happening. So it actually sends those signals to move around and to grab your son or daughter out of harm's way before you could actually reconcile the scenario. Your brain has already done so. Things like walking, not done by your brain, sends a signal to your spinal cord and says, hey, keep going. And your spinal cord takes over. There's a lot of part of the human being that is passive, that's kind of sitting back, not being actively aware of what's going on. Judgments of other people are much the same way. Based upon our experiences, our existence, our history, whatever we've got growing up and for the rest of our lives until now, that all gets pieced together, and we make assumptions about people, and then our conscious mind is able to weigh in on it. Not before that. We can't think before we speak. Most of the time we're just speaking. And if we're really honest with ourselves and we really pay a lot of attention, we're not sitting there thinking inside our heads before we say anything. We're not analyzing why we're saying what we're saying before we do so. This entire episode is stream of consciousness based upon experiences, understanding, things I've read. And here we are at 5 minutes and it's still going strong. So life is a lot of passive, unconscious existence. Now here's the trick, and this is one of the coolest things I think I've heard someone say in a long time, and it's a really neat kind of idea. So I got to give this to an episode of Will Smith. I may be able to find that episode and put it down, but he summarized it really well, which was that it may not be your fault for something that's happening to you right now, but it's certainly your responsibility to get out of it or to fix it. Because no one else is gonna. Doesn't matter why you're there, right? You need to either seek the help you can, or if there are, events or capabilities, or you got to get out of it, because that's not going to just happen magically. Well, with judgments, we have a lot of the same kind of instance. So I might judge someone, and I might be racist or sexist, or I might have like a horrible disposition towards people who like Superman or Batman. But I can correct those dispositions after the fact. So I might, at first, dislike that person from the other team. But then realizing later, through self-reflection, is there a reason why that other team is bad? Now, in very few circumstances, are you going to be able to actually come up with certifiable, rational, science-backed reasons as to why another group or another team is actually worse than yours, or another group of people is worse than yours? These aren't things that are backed under scrutiny. So then you have the option, once you do the self-reflection. Do I continue this route and ignore the information, the root of ignorance, right? Or do I change the habit? Do I work on building the response that makes me do something different, that makes me do the right or good thing, that makes me do the correct thing, at the very least, the rationally correct? That's what you have to worry about. It's not judgment up front. It's not walking in someone's shoes for a mile or a certain period of time. It's not trying to fit yourself into another person's strategy or life. It's sort of taking a step back after you've made the mistake and fixing who you are, actively building the kind of person you want to be. That's your responsibility. So look over the links, have some comments. You will judge people before you have any context of them, other than just seeing them in front of you. When you're wrong, which will be most of the time, fix that. Work on it. Otherwise, you're being ignorant. Now for the dorky joke. So this one I have to give credit to Jack Handy, because I got it from Deep Thoughts, but it seems to fit really well. Jack Handy says, "You should really walk a mile in someone else's shoes before you judge them. That way, you're a mile away, and you've got their shoes when you judge them." Anyhow, have a good day, subscribe, and that's all.